This vehicle represented one of the most ambitious soft power projects ever attempted by a modern nation. With hundreds of millions in oligarch funding and direct Kremlin support, this car and the program behind it could have established Russia as a motorsport powerhouse for decades to come. Instead, within just a few years, it all came crashing down, leaving nothing but debts and embarrassment. Today, we're breaking down Russia's plan to take over Formula One. In the aftermath of the Soviet collapse, Russia was desperately trying to rebuild not only its economy, but its global reputation. By the early 2000s, under Putin's leadership, the country had stabilized and was looking to reclaim its status as a world power. But how do you announce your return to the global stage? Military might wasn't enough, as Russia needed some kind of soft power, a way to make the world admire it rather than just fear it. Sports became the perfect vehicle for this ambition. Around the world, nations with complex reputations were turning to high-profile sporting events as reputation laundromats. Qatar and Saudi Arabia, for example, were pouring billions into hosting prestigious events and owning famous teams. This practice, now commonly called sportswashing, allows countries to shift attention from problematic politics to glamorous entertainment. But no one embraced this strategy quite so hard as Putin's Russia. In a calculated sequence of bids, Russia secured hosting rights for the 2014 Winter Olympics and the 2018 World Cup. Putin personally lobbied for these events, even breaking character to deliver his Olympic pitch in multiple languages.
It is a great honor for me to address you today and to present the bid of Sochi to host the Olympic Winter Games in 2014.
And he doesn't really do that for anything. The Sochi Games were meant to reveal a new face of Russia, open to the world. Kremlin had spent an eye-watering $50 billion on those Winter Olympics, more than all previous Winter Games combined, to ensure this narrative took hold. The 2018 World Cup followed the same playbook. 3 million foreign visitors flooded into Russia, experiencing warm hospitality and impressive infrastructure instead of the cold, intimidating country they imagined. Social media lit up with tourists' surprise reactions. Russia isn't what I expected. This was exactly the message Moscow wanted to project, a Russia that was safe, modern, and open to the world. But hosting occasional events wasn't enough. Russia needed a sustained presence in a globally visible, high-tech, glamorous sport to continuously prop up its image. Something that combined technological progress, high risk, celebrity appeal, and global viewership. Something that screamed wealth and success. Formula One was absolutely perfect for what they wanted. Unlike the Olympics or World Cup, which come and go, F1 offered year-round visibility, with races across 5 continents and hundreds of millions of viewers worldwide. So, Kremlin devised a two-pronged strategy to conquer Formula One. First, create a Russian Grand Prix to showcase the country. Second, establish a Russian team and develop Russian drivers who could plant the flag on podiums. Both elements were essential. A Grand Prix alone would bring F1 to Russia, but having Russian competitors in the races would make Russians invested in the sport. This wasn't Russia's first attempt at joining the F1 circus, by the way. Even back in the Soviet days, there had been aborted talks about hosting a Grand Prix in Moscow. But this time was different. Russia had the money, the political will, and a leader determined to use sports as a tool of statecraft. In the first decade of the 2000s, these two parallel missions were launched. So let's look at how they unfolded, starting with Russia's attempt to put its own team on the grid. Formula One teams are notoriously difficult to establish. The technological barriers to entry are immense, the costs astronomical, and the competition ruthless. The grid is limited, only 10 teams can compete in a season. All of this means newcomers are typically stuck at the back for years before finding their footing. Just look at Haas. They've been in F1 forever and can barely make it into the points. Many established car manufacturers like Toyota, BMW, and Ford had tried and failed to make a lasting impact in F1, but Russia was laser-focused. In 2010, an opportunity arose when FIA opened entry to new teams with the promise of a budget cap, as this was supposed to make the sport more accessible. Among the teams that secured entry was Virgin Racing. It was a small British team backed by none other than Richard Branson and his Virgin Group. This is where the Russian element enters the picture. Nikolai Fomenko, a Russian businessman, had founded Marussia Motors, a Russian sports car manufacturer with big ambitions but limited production. Seeing an opportunity to catapult his brand onto the world stage, Fomenko engineered a deal to first sponsor and then buy into Virgin Racing. I bet he had to read Art of the Deal a couple of times to come up with this strategy. By 2012, the transformation was complete. Virgin Racing became the Marussia F1 team, racing under a Russian license. The red, white, and blue of the Russian flag was on the cars, and a Russian team was officially competing in the most elite motorsport championship in the world. Promotional materials for the team proudly proclaimed Russian passion, British technology. However, this hybrid structure was both Marussia's greatest strength and its fatal weakness. The 2010 season for Virgin Racing exposed the harsh realities of entering F1 as a newcomer. The most embarrassing part was probably that the team's car was designed with a fuel tank too small to finish races at full pace. This wasn't a manufacturing error, but a fundamental design flaw coming from the team's reliance on pure computer simulation instead of traditional wind tunnel testing. When Marussia took over, they inherited all of these technical limitations, including the fuel tank fiasco. To minimize this, they had to opt in for Cosworth engines, which were significantly less powerful than the Ferrari and Mercedes power units used by leading teams. The Cosworth engines were cheaper as well, because the financial realities of being in Formula One were equally harsh. The promised budget cap that had lured new teams never materialized. Instead, Marussia found itself competing against teams spending 5-10 times its budget. Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes were spending upwards of $300-400 million annually, while Marussia operated on perhaps $50-70 million, barely enough to keep the lights on in Formula One terms. This disparity showed on track. From 2012 through most of 2014, Marussia and the other new teams routinely qualified at the back of the grid, often several seconds off the pace of frontrunners. For a project meant to showcase Russian technical advancement, the optics were disastrous. Yet despite these setbacks, the team persevered. And in the 2014 season, they experienced a truly unique moment. On May 25th, 2014, amid the yachts and royalty of Monte Carlo, Marussia experienced their greatest triumph. Their young French driver Jules Bianchi, a Ferrari Academy talent on loan to the team, drove the race of his life. Starting from the back of the grid, he took advantage of others' mistakes to move up the order. When the checkered flag fell, Bianchi had secured 9th place, an unthinkable result for the backmarker team. Those 2 championship points were the first ever scored by Marussia, and more significantly, the first points ever scored by a Russian licensed constructor in Formula One history.
Hi Joel, this is John. Mighty job, mate. Absolute mighty.
Good. So which place you finished the penalty?
I think we're P9. I think we are P9. Very good race, Joel.
Russian media exploded with pride. Headlines declared a new era in Russian motorsport. Government officials, who had previously shown little interest, suddenly claimed long-standing support. The Monaco result seemed to validate the entire Marussia project, suggesting that with time and development, a true Russian presence in Formula One can be achieved. But instead of being the beginning of a success story, Monaco 2014 would prove to be the high water mark for Russian Formula One ambitions. 4 months after the points in Monaco, Marussia faced the horror of the Japanese Grand Prix. In wet conditions, Jules Bianchi, the hero of Monaco, lost control and collided with a recovery vehicle. He would never race again, remaining in a coma until his passing in July 2015. By late 2014, Marussia was drowning in debt. Reports indicated the team owed around £60 million to various creditors, including crucial technical partners like McLaren and Ferrari. The expensive switch to hybrid engines that year had pushed operating costs beyond anything the backers of the team ever expected. In November 2014, the inevitable happened. Marussia Formula One team went bankrupt. Staff were laid off, assets frozen, and entries for the season's remaining races withdrawn. As one motorsport journalist summarized, Marussia will be remembered as a bold experiment that delivered a single moment of joy, but ultimately demonstrated that national pride alone can't power a Formula One car to the front of the grid. While Russia's F1 team was struggling to find its footing, the parallel effort to establish a Grand Prix on Russian soil was advancing with more apparent success. With the Sochi Olympics spot secured, a new opportunity presented itself. why not integrate a Formula One circuit into the Olympic Park infrastructure? The Olympic Park in Sochi contained multiple venues and broad connecting roadways. By designing a circuit that would weave between these permanent Olympic structures, Russia could create a street circuit with a difference, one that would showcase its Olympic legacy while adding a new prestigious event to the calendar. Herman Tilke, F1's go-to circuit designer, responsible for most new tracks in the modern era, was commissioned to create the Sochi Autodrome. Construction proceeded rapidly, with Putin personally monitoring progress. Nothing was spared to ensure the circuit would be ready for its debut in 2014, scheduled strategically for October after the Winter Olympics, but still within the glow of that event's success. The first Russian Grand Prix had all the spectacle one could wish for. Military jets performed flyovers, and Putin himself presented the winner's trophy to Lewis Hamilton after the race.
Accustomed to awarding you something each year, year after year.
Yeah, just this time I want to spray with champagne. I wasn't me last time, it was someone else.
For a moment, it seemed Russia had successfully added another jewel to its sporting crown. However, beneath the surface, problems were already apparent to those paying close attention. Formula One drivers are usually diplomatic immediately after a new circuit's debut. No one wants to criticize a host nation that has invested hundreds of millions, but as the years went by and F1 returned to Sochi annually, the verdict became increasingly clear. The circuit was, to put it kindly, not delivering exciting racing. The track's fundamental flaw was its layout. After the impressive 900-meter left-hand sweep of Turn 3, which looked spectacular, but actually created zero overtaking opportunities, the remainder of the lap degenerated into a series of similar 90-degree corners with little character. Massive asphalt runoff areas meant there was virtually no penalty for drivers exceeding track limits, a huge contrast to challenging circuits like Monaco or Spa. The surface itself was unusually smooth, which minimized tire degradation. While good for consistency, this reduced strategic variables in the race. Without significant tire wear forcing different pit stop strategies, races tended to become processional, just cars following each other in the same order lap after lap with few position changes. Sounds a lot like Monaco, right? By 2016, F1 journalists were ranking Sochi among the least exciting venues on the calendar. Fan reaction was similarly lukewarm. TV viewership numbers for the Russian Grand Prix typically ranked below average for the season. For a project specifically designed to generate positive global attention, this was a painful failure. Beyond the racing itself, Sochi faced logistical challenges. Despite being Russia's premier resort city, it remained relatively remote from population centers and major international airports. While local attendance was decent, the event struggled to attract significant numbers of international fans. Sochi Autodrome became what critics call a white elephant, an expensive facility that generates minimal return on investment outside its showcase event. By 2020, even Formula One's management had tacitly acknowledged Sochi's limitations. Plans were announced to relocate the Russian Grand Prix to Igora Drive, a purpose-built circuit near St. Petersburg, starting in 2023. This decision effectively confirmed what insiders had long known. The Sochi experiment hadn't delivered the top-tier racing experience that both F1 and Russia had hoped for. While Russia's team and circuit efforts were advancing, a parallel story was unfolding with the nation's drivers. The breakthrough came with Vitaly Petrov as he debuted with the Renault team in 2010. His arrival was no coincidence. It aligned perfectly with Russia's broader F1 strategy. However, as a rookie in a midfield team, he faced a steep learning curve. Early races brought inevitable crashes of a newcomer. Of course, the international press was not kind, questioning whether he had earned his place or purchased it through sponsorship. I mean, how is that even a question, Joe? Of course he paid. It's called a Formula One takeover strategy for a reason. What do you think they had time to look for someone to go through junior formulas? But Petrov silenced many critics during the 2010 season finale in Abu Dhabi. In a race with championship implications, he masterfully defended his position against Fernando Alonso for numerous laps, effectively helping Sebastian Vettel win the title by preventing Alonso from advancing.
I hope he will be cooled down. I think it's racing.
The high point of Petrov's career came early in 2011. At the Australian Grand Prix, he qualified an impressive 6th and drove a flawless race to finish 3rd, earning his first podium finish. The image of Petrov standing alongside race winner Sebastian Vettel and runner-up Lewis Hamilton was a powerful symbol for Russian motorsport. However, Petrov's F1 fairy tale would not last. As the 2011 season progressed, tensions emerged between the driver and his team. After a disappointing race late in the season, Petrov publicly criticized Renault's strategy and car development. Team management was not pleased, and when the opportunity arose to sign returning champion Kimi Räikkönen for 2012, Petrov found himself without a seat. Despite this, he managed to secure a drive with the backmarker Caterham team for 2012, but this was a significant step down from his previous ride. Instead of fighting for podiums, he was now battling just to avoid last place. When Caterham chose not to retain him for 2013, Petrov's F1 career ended after just 3 seasons. If Petrov was Russia's F1 pioneer, Daniil Kvyat represented its greatest hope for genuine success. Unlike Petrov, who had worked his way up through various racing series with mixed results, Kvyat came through Red Bull's junior driver program. Finally, Russians sent somebody with at least a little bit of talent. After success in lower Formula, he was fast-tracked to Formula 1 with Red Bull's junior team at just 19 years old. He immediately made an impact, scoring points in his very first race and demonstrating natural speed that caught the attention of team management. After just 1 season in F1, Kvyat was promoted to the main Red Bull racing team for 2015, replacing 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, who had departed for Ferrari. This was a stunning vote of confidence, if you ask me. For Russia's F1 project, this represented a tremendous breakthrough. Here was a Russian driver in a race-winning car, with realistic prospects of podiums and perhaps even victories. The 2015 season even started well for Kvyat. Though initially overshadowed by his more experienced teammate, he gradually found his footing. By mid-season, he was regularly matching Ricciardo's pace.
Don't flirt with him.
I'm not going to...
And at the Hungarian Grand Prix, he secured his first podium with a second-place finish. By the end of the year, he had outscored Ricciardo in the championship standings, an achievement no one had predicted. But Formula 1 can be brutal, and Kvyat was about to learn this lesson in the hardest possible way. The 2016 season began with controversy. At the Chinese Grand Prix, Kvyat made an aggressive start that led to a minor collision involving Sebastian Vettel. While many analysts considered it a legitimate racing move, Vettel was furious.
You came like a torpedo.
Well, it's racing.
Yeah, racing, but you know, if I keep going the same line, you crash.
Don't keep going.
Yeah, but there was a car on the left also.
Well,
that's
so
why I hit the other
I can see all the 3 cars, man. Come on. I have only 2 eyes.
Well,
2 cars.
You will crash if you do like that.
But we didn't. So.
Yeah, you did it.
2 weeks later came the Russian Grand Prix. On the first lap, Kvyat misjudged his braking and hit Vettel's Ferrari not once but twice. The second impact sent Vettel spinning into the barriers and out of the race. That was clearly over the limit, and within days, Red Bull announced that Kvyat would be demoted back to the Junior Toro Rosso team, with 18-year-old Max Verstappen taking his place at Red Bull. Kvyat's life also became strangely intertwined with Verstappen's beyond the racetrack. His former girlfriend Kelly Piquet began dating Verstappen, and that was probably too much. The remainder of 2016 and 2017 saw him struggle visibly. His performances became erratic, his confidence clearly damaged. The signature aggression that had once been his strength now manifested as overdriving and mistakes. By late 2017, after a series of disappointing results, Red Bull dropped him from their program entirely. There was also Sergei Sirotkin, who took the opportunity to come in 2018 with the Williams team, once a powerhouse, but by then fallen on hard times. But that was a simple pay driver move. He was selected over the popular Robert Kubica, largely thanks to the substantial financial backing of SMP Racing, the heavily funded Russian racing program. Nevertheless, Sirotkin generally matched or outqualified his teammate Lance Stroll. Yes, that's 2 pay drivers, 1 team. His single championship point came at the Italian Grand Prix after other cars were disqualified. That was a disappointing result that reflected the Williams car's limitations rather than his ability. However, when Williams needed to secure its financial future for 2019, they opted to sign Kubica, who brought substantial Polish sponsorship. Just like that, after only 21 races, Sirotkin's F1 career was over. But after Sirotkin came one Russian driver who we will remember forever. If Sirotkin's F1 journey was quiet and professional, Nikita Mazepin's was anything but. The son of billionaire Dmitry Mazepin, owner of fertilizer giant Uralkali, Nikita's path to F1 was paved with his father's fortune. Mazepin did win some races in junior formula, but never seriously contended for championships. Nevertheless, when the struggling Haas F1 team needed funding for the 2021 season, Uralkali's sponsorship secured Nikita a race seat alongside Mick Schumacher. Honestly, his career deserves a separate video. I've already made one. You should check it out. And by the way, I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by Formula 1 summer break. So if you like the video so far, don't forget to subscribe. Events beyond the racetrack ultimately brought Mazepin's F1 career to an abrupt end. The Haas team faced immediate pressure regarding its Russian connections in 2022. Within days, the team terminated both Mazepin's contract and the Uralkali sponsorship, citing the need to dissociate from Russia amid international condemnation of the military action. The image of Mazepin leaving F1 put a stop to Russia's Formula 1 takeover strategy, as the country's priorities have clearly shifted. For a time, this sportswashing strategy showed promise. Formula 1 was meant to continue this momentum of the Winter Olympics and World Cup, providing a yearly reminder of Russia's place among developed, technologically advanced nations. However, sportswashing requires a certain subtlety to be effective. The most successful examples, like Qatar's ownership of Paris Saint-Germain or Abu Dhabi's of Manchester City, maintain some distance between state identity and sporting entity. Russia's approach, with Putin personally associated with every major sporting event, lacked this strategic restraint. The heavy-handed state presence transformed potential soft power opportunities into transparent propaganda exercises. The lesson here is sobering for any nation considering sports as a reputation management tool. Athletic competitions can temporarily shift attention, but cannot fundamentally alter how a country is perceived if its actions contradict the image it wishes to project. Russia discovered that you cannot race away from geopolitical reality. Eventually, the two tracks converge, and you find yourself at square one.